Good evening, everybody. I'd like to go ahead and call the October 22nd meeting of the Placerville City Council to order. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, and good evening to our guests and all of our very important department heads that are here in attendance this evening. It should be noted that Mr. Warren is not with us this evening, so Chief, the budget is yours. And we'll let him know. All right, thank you all. I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Acuna,
Here.
Councilmember Borelli,
Here.
Vice Mayor Saragosa,
Here.
Councilmember Taylor,
Here.
Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, and good evening to Sue Rodman, who is now in her official seat, so this meeting can continue. All right, we have three items under announcements and presentations to the public this evening, and first one off, I want to thank Lawrence Crabtree for taking our invitation so quickly, and he was here at our last meeting, and we asked him to come back so that we could get him some official time on the agenda. Apologize for the size of the crowd, but who knows, from meeting to meeting, you never know. But we would like to go ahead and invite you up to make your presentation this evening. And again, this is Lawrence Crabtree, representing the El Dorado National Forest. Good evening, sir.
So yeah, good evening. I appreciate the chance to talk about the Forest Service. I started working for this agency in 1969, and I'm really a proud employee of the Forest Service. I realize that we have a history of some conflicts in our history. Let's say right now it's about fire and fire management. It's about timber management, about roads and road management. So we have I like to say, my job is more difficult because I have 350 million stakeholders. And a lot of those people have strongly held views about what the forest should be, how it should be managed. And so recently, one of those stakeholders wrote a letter, unsigned, criticizing, the management of the Forest Service and me personally. And, that hurts a little bit, but I want to continue to talk about the good things we're doing because I think we have a good story to tell. So I'm going to start by, just as a reminder, our mission is about the health, diversity, and productivity of these nation's forests, and that is to be focused on current and future generations. So that's kind of when you think about it, that's quite a job, really, to keep the forest healthy, diverse, and productive for current and future generations. But it's kind of a neat mission to have. I think a good mission to have. So lately, I think I said last time, as a reminder, I'm part of the executive branch of this country, and the executive branch would like to see more timber harvesting and has asked us to do that. So in this forest, we responded. It's not the largest forest in the region, and that's region meaning the state of California. There's 16 forests. El Dorado is about 600,000 acres. It's not the largest, and we don't have the largest workforce. Although in this community, we have a workforce of about 350 people right now. So those people are all part of the community. While we're not the largest forest and we're not the largest workforce, we sold more timber than any forest in the state this year, and I'm really pleased about that. There's going to be an article in the paper tomorrow that says we sold $49,000 worth of timber. It actually should be 49 million board feet of timber, and it's quite a bit different. That is our story. We sold about 10,000 loads of logs from this forest this year, and that's enough to make a difference. Almost every load of logs you see between Sacramento and Placerville is a load of National Forest logs. And so those logs to me are forest health. They're thinning. They're small logs. If you see, most of the logs are small logs. They're thinning. A forest is left behind. They are jobs in this community. And they are building materials. I have to remind people, probably not you people, but we build homes in this country out of wood. And in this state, most of the wood is imported. we're on board here on this forest with meeting a piece of that demand by timber sales. Yeah, oh, and the last piece of that is fuel treatment. When we sell timber and have trees removed from the forest, we leave behind a forest, but a more sparsely stocked forest, a forest that would look more natural, a forest we can put fire in eventually. So that's our story about timber harvesting. I think I said last time, and I was kind of pressed for time, but I'd just like to remind people that I rely on Congress to fund the work we do here. We are part of what's called discretionary funding. I'll remind people I work for a company that's already borrowed $23 trillion. And so, it's hard to get the funds we need to manage the forest the way we should. And so, and I'm also going to say I work for an administration right now that's concerned about the size of the federal workforce and is asking us to do everything we can with the workforce we have. And so, while we are trying to push back on that a bit and say, we're doing all we can, people are really stressed, really tired. The position is really there's other priorities than more Forest Service employees. So I have an organization chart that has 40 vacancies on it. And so it might, might say, well, we're getting by without those, which we are, but there's stresses and things starting to show up. And so part of my response to that vacancies and believing that that's part of the future, I'm planning to consolidate 2 of the 4 ranger districts on this forest. We have a ranger district at Fresh Pond and one at Camino, and there's 8 miles apart on Highway 50. I think we can combine those and have less money spent on, facilities, and I think I could have fewer employees and get the same job done. And so that's caused some tension in the workforce and some folks who are just not happy with that. We have a long tradition of not being very nimble, and I can say I'm part of that. We are proud of our heritage, and we tend to not be sort of out in the public very much. We're people who chose the career in the forest to be in the forest. I mean, that really is part of our culture, is not being out there much talking about ourselves. So we're trying to consolidate, trying to do things differently. Another thing I'm doing differently on this forest is, also in response to less money, is turning our campgrounds over to concessionaires. And people will say, well, you're privatizing the campgrounds, and I'd rather not do that. It costs a lot of money to manage campgrounds. It takes people, it takes money. And so other companies can do that. So one of the themes I'm having is, we'll do what we have to do, and we'll find somebody else to do the rest of it. So it's a change. And, I go to seminars and meetings on leading change, and it's pretty easy to talk about in when you have a consultant talking to you about leading change. It's a little different when you come back to your forest and say, well, my idea now is to consolidate ranger districts to not fill jobs that I don't think I have to fill, and to spend the money on what I think is really important. And so it's caused tension in the workforce and maybe even in the community. But I think if you look at what we've actually done, sold more timber than any forest in the state, and incidentally treated last year 18,000 acres of fuel as part of the timber sales and other work. Those are big numbers. Those are enough to make a difference. I've also touched on a couple things, then I want to answer questions, but we have a big relationship now with Sierra Pacific Industries. California spotted owls are being examined for listing as an endangered species. So our position is we wouldn't want that. So we're working with Sierra Pacific Industries, who is a major landowner, major timber owner, to work together to demonstrate to the Fish and Wildlife Service that we are protecting that habitat. That's one of our current themes. That's about relationships and partnerships. I've proposed a master stewardship agreement with El Dorado County, where we would turn projects over to the county to implement on the ground. We haven't finalized it, but that's where we're headed. We put the first Farm Bill agreement in the state in place here with CAL FIRE. We had a great relationship with CAL FIRE following the King Fire. And so we have a relationship where we can share money back and forth, and they can treat private land and public land with the same money. Those are really a changed world for us. Our world had traditionally been Congress gives us money and we spend it on projects we think are important. That is not how we're operating now. So another example of CAL FIRE is we have a cache up here. We had a cache of fire equipment. We've moved the hose and pumps and that equipment out to our ranger stations, and CAL FIRE is going to put a large cache of their own in our building up here at what we call our work center. So the result for me would be there will be more fire suppression capabilities in this county than ever. But there'll be one employee that will be moved to another job. That's probably the outside of that, the downside of that. I have my executive assistant here, Laura French, and she's going to remind me of things that I forgot to mention. And so I just could talk a long time about, the difficulty of managing 600,000 acres in a declining income flow. I think I will kind of close on this with saying we have a lot of partners, a lot of significant partners. SMUD, EID, Sierra Nevada Conservancy, meeting with other people who want to invest in this forest. So it's not appropriated money from Congress, it's outside money. And I think that's really going to be part of the answer for the future for this forest, is partners who want to invest in the forest. Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, companies you wouldn't normally think would want to invest in the national forest are wanting to invest in the national forest. And so that's a changed future world for us. I think, so I want to just touch on the Caples prescribed fire. We set a fire, started burning the Caples watershed 2.5 weeks ago. Wind event came up. We struggled to keep that fire in the boundary that it should be in. Eventually I had to declare it a wildfire, which it wasn't a good feeling for me, but it was the right thing to do. CAL FIRE then joined us with major resources and stopped the progress of the fire, and we're just finishing it up now. But the important part of Caples is it provides water for this community. That's where EID gets their water. And so we could have waited for a King Fire kind of event, but we chose to get out ahead of it and do some burning ahead of that. And I'm not pleased with the burning that we ended up with. I've flown that several times. The drainage looks pretty good to me. It looks a lot more resistant to a future fire than certainly it would have before that. It's a drainage that we had kept fire out of for 100 years. That's been our mission, suppressing all wildfires. And so there's a consequence to that. You have a forest that has accumulated fuel for 100 years. That's not a natural situation, and that's not what that's really the result of a managed forest. We put out fires. In fact, we have records that show we put out 49 fires in that drainage over the past few decades. So we put out everything, and now we had a situation that we couldn't manage a fire in. So I think I'm just going to close with this. We had a poster up there on our bulletin board along the highway, and somebody wrote on there, "Forest Service did it again for the 1,000th time, destroying our forest for lack of management." And then there was a couple of misspelled words, like forest is usually spelled with one R for me. But still, then somebody else wrote, what a dumb thing to write. "Thank you, forest, for returning the fire to the forest. Keep it well," with a little heart. So, I think this kind of symbolizes for me, when I looked at that and I thought about it, this kind of symbolizes probably the tension that's in the world that I live in. Certainly there are people who don't want to see timber harvesting. There are people who understand we have to put fire back in the ecosystem. There are people who don't want smoke, particularly when there's no power. And I think I know some pretty close relatives that could say that. I think I would just like to answer a few questions about what's going on in the forest.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Crabtree. We appreciate your presentation this evening. Let's see if the council has any questions for you. I'll start here on my right. Kara, did you have
Yeah, I've got a couple
questions or
questions.
comments?
Where is the timber being milled and where is it being sold?
Yeah, good question. So that's one of the challenges. It's being milled in Lincoln. There's really only one purchaser in this world right now that I live in for purchasing timber. So if you're a seller, like I'm selling the public's timber, it's kind of at a disadvantage for me when you only have one purchaser, really. But yeah, it's going to Lincoln,
Okay.
and for not much revenue generated.
Penny, did you have any
Well,
questions?
I just kind of had a comment. Thank you for all your explanation, and I appreciate all the negatives. We go through it up here, as you well know. But also, the compliments are nice when they come through, too. I moved here as a kid, and I remember in the good old days when the Forest Service really supported us all going to school and the roads that we drove on and everything.
Yep.
So, and it seemed like it all came to a screeching halt when timber sales weren't allowed anymore. Is that true? And you talk about the sales that are out there. What are they in comparison to what was happening when we were so supported? And I don't know that money came through Washington or if it was a local thing with the county. I don't know, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I think I can answer that. Yes, I actually worked in the era when timber was a big part of how roads and schools got funded in rural counties that were largely national forests like this one. So, and there was millions of dollars involved. Let's say I didn't work on this forest, but I worked in another forest. There was multiple sawmills. There was a lot of competition for the products. And we were selling large trees. That large trees have a lot of value, had a lot of value. So there was millions of dollars being generated.
Right.
So it's a different world now. We're selling small trees. And I don't know if I can explain this, but so all of the contracts on this forest are called stewardship contracts. And I was challenged by Congressman McClintock about this not too long ago. We're not sending money to Congress. We're called stewardship contracts. We offer up the timber, and so you get the timber, and then you have to do some fuel treatment. So in exchange, it's exchange of goods for services. So we trade the timber for the timber cutting and then additional fuel treatment. So in the end, the forest, I think, is healthier, but there's no money being generated anywhere,
Okay.
really.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's a different world. It is different, yeah.
Thank you.
That's a good question, Patty. That was quite the day when those trucks used to come every year. That was a
Yeah.
celebration at the Board of Supervisors. So you're absolutely right. I appreciate Patty remembering that.
Yeah.
How could you remember that?
It pays,
Michael,
all
did
that
you have
wisdom
questions
pays.
for-
No, I just like to say thank you, Mr. Crabtree, for coming out and giving us the information. I also really appreciate what you brought up on in terms of cables as well. So I think, like Patty said, sometimes you have to make hard decisions, and I appreciate what you did.
Dennis?
I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your evening to spend it with us here. Feel free to stay for the rest of the meeting as well.
Just what he wants to
Yeah.
do.
I've got to go home and get some ice and some batteries. But, yeah.
Probably a good plan.
Plug everything in.
Get ready.
I truly appreciate your leadership at the Forest Service here locally and how you support our community, and I think how you support our values here in this community. And I know that you battle a lot of different competing interests when you start dealing with the Forest Service. And I know that you have to honor all of those interests and find ways to work through them with people and build those bridges and literally and figuratively to get to serve all the people. And I appreciate your effort that goes into that, so thank you.
And I would echo the same sentiments. I do have a couple questions. Will you guys try Cables Lake again? Is it
Pardon?
done for the season? Will you go back out there and set that?
No, it's done for the season.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a no on the additional burning
Okay.
Yeah, but maybe, we'll see what happens there, you know. That fire burned pretty hot, probably hotter than we wanted, but it probably is within what I would call the natural range. And there's a lot of trees left. In fact, you know, we found some of the biggest trees on the forest in that drainage. It's kind of rumors out there. There's some trees that are 12 to 18 feet in diameter out there.
What species?
Incense cedar and sugar pine,
Ooh, sugar pine.
yeah.
Very nice.
But, you know, it's kind of, apparently they discovered a little grove of some really, really large trees. Kind of a neat story, really large trees, and we have no intention of doing anything but admiring them occasionally.
That's good to know that there's still some of those left out there.
Yeah.
Appreciate the update on the conversion of the fire cache from your organization to CAL FIRE's. What sparked their interest in taking that over? I mean, it's a great thing. I'm glad it's.
You know, I don't know. They just said, hey, we'll put a cache in there, and we moved our cache out to the districts. And so, I don't know. Maybe they've been waiting for this opportunity. But it's a good example of interdependence in this community. I know our relationship with CAL FIRE and the Forest Service in this community is different than it is elsewhere for whatever reason, and I think it's good.
Yeah, that is a good reason. That it's,
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. It's our building, it's their stuff.
Now, the Forest Genetics, is that still open to the public to go
Still
into
open
the
to the public.
museum?
Yeah, exactly. I was up there today, as a matter of fact, yeah.
Does it still have all the trees identified, all the experimental trees that have grown
Yeah.
from all over California?
Yes, it does, and actually, if we combine these two ranger districts, we may move some of our national forest people up there to that office, because it's gotten very small. It's a beautiful building, it's a beautiful site, and so I'm like, it's a reasonable place for some people to work.
All right, and last question is, are you still maintaining the same number of fire stations during fire season, like Grizzly Flat?
Yes. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, good question. Yes, we did. Now, so that's a kind of a complicated question. So let's just say we have 10 fire engines on this forest, which is about what we have. We have 5 of those for the forest, and we have 5 of those for the nation. That's just how we work. So we have 5 engines that we'll have here at all times. We have 5 more that can go anywhere in this country, and they do all the time. And so there was a couple of those engines that we didn't staff this year for some personnel reasons. I would just say if I have a, so if I have a way I look at it, if I'm not comfortable with the leadership of an engine and I wouldn't put my grandkids in that engine, I wouldn't put somebody else's in it. So we had a couple engines that weren't staffed, and we will restaff those next year. But they weren't the engines that were required, what we require for this community. They were the higher numbered engines, if that makes sense. So, yeah, we had a couple engines that we didn't staff for part of this summer.
Well, thank you very much.
It's hard to develop an engine captain. Other companies take our people. We had PG&E hired some people from us. Metro hired some people from us. We train good people. We have good people. And if they get a better job, I'm all for it. But it does leave us a little, low on staffing. And you just don't develop an engine captain or assistant engine captain in, a few months. That's years. So, yeah, we had some holes in our organization.
And you still have hotshot crews.
We have hotshot crews, and we have other crews here, too. We have a hill attack crew, 20 people. We have a hotshot crew. We have 3 hand crews, 10 person each. We have a lot of fire resources on this forest.
Well, that's good to know, because you're an important part of the organization, which is the entire county. It sounds like you have urban problems on the forest. That's terrible. I mean, losing people to other organizations and trying to staff with the quality, with the
Well,
proper training. And
It's a
it's
pay issue,
unfortunate.
but for me, if somebody gets a better job, I think it's great.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We all face that. Well,
Yeah.
If there's no other questions, I'll go ahead and thank you again on behalf of the council for your time this evening, and go home and charge things up while the lights are still on.
Okay.
Thank you both for your time this evening. All right. We'll move on from a happy forest story, we'll move to item 3.2, an update on the PG&E PSPS event, and we'll start with Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I wanted to just briefly talk a little bit first about the previous PSPS event, the Public Safety Power Shutoff that we had October 9th and 10th. I first of all want to say I want to thank my staff, some who are not here, but many who are, for how they performed. I thought the city did very well during this event, given what we were faced with. Some of the things I just want to, prior to the shut-off, we prepared by making sure all of our facilities were ready, fueled generators, fueled vehicles, et cetera. Some of those, the police department operated pretty much on normal operations. There were a couple of issues with some of their IT issues and stuff, but those were resolved quickly. Town hall in this building was also on generator and operated normally. Our water reclamation facility, our wastewater plant, was on backup power. They had a communication issue with their equipment for off-site, which required them to go on 24-hour shifts. However, they may have gone on the 24-hour shifts because of the situation anyway, just to make sure that things were running properly. That communication issue has been resolved and should not be a problem this time. We won't know for sure until it goes out again. But we think we tested that problem, and we think that we got that resolved. Other things, we just made sure that we had our connections with County OES, PG&E, Caltrans. Of course, you saw that we were able to work with Caltrans and PG&E to get the traffic signals operational on Highway 50 during this event, and that was a big plus, having that happen. And so that piece is in place for the future also. We used our city website and social media, as well as police department social media, to distribute information. We tried to keep that as up to date as possible, but primarily preferred people to PG&E for information, because they were the primary ones that could address some of those issues. During the emergency, things were pretty much, to a certain extent, as normal. As I mentioned, the police department really didn't have any major issues. In talking to the police chief, they operated pretty much as usual in their department. And I've mentioned the others, the water reclamation facility, town hall here. There were minor issues, but for the most part, those functions continued as normal. At City Hall, that is the one facility we do not have backup power. We did, most of our employees stayed there. There were a few who had childcare issues, and we excused for the day because the schools were out, and so there were some issues that came up with that, but we were able to accommodate that. The rest of us enjoyed being there and taking the time to take care of some things that didn't require technology, such as filing. I know a lot of us caught up on that. On our floor we did. I know that the finance department cleaned out our vault and found some interesting things when they were cleaning that out too that they hadn't done for a while. So there were things that went on during that time that were useful and productive for our staff. So after the emergency, I just wanted to bring up a few things. We had IT evaluate the issues that came up and review those and look at ways to make sure that those wouldn't be an issue going forward. We have prepared a draft public safety power shutoff operations plan that is still in draft mode, and we've got some of the general issues resolved on that, and our department heads are working out the operational procedures specific to their departments to put in writing, so for the future we have that to look at. We have continued communication with PG&E to find out, what was the reason for the shutdown, given the lack of a wind event in our county virtually. And I know that Mayor Kuna has done that also. We've requested the information. We have not received information back, answers to those questions yet. They have told us that they're required to file a response to the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, and that they would share that with us when they got it. And it would answer, hopefully, some of those questions. We'll see what they have. Last thing I wanted to report on that was interesting to me was our sales tax consultant did an analysis for us, and this didn't cost us anything as part of our contract with them, by the way. And they determined that our sales tax loss, our Bradley Burns sales tax, which our regular sales tax was lost for the 2 days, was about $20,000. $20,700 is what they calculated. And then in addition, our special taxes, which is measure H, L, and J, a loss of about $14,200 based on their analysis. So a total of about almost $35,000 between those, our tax measures and our general tax. I did talk to a couple of vendors, restaurants on Main Street. One stated they calculated they lost approximately $1,000 in worth of product. Another one told me that they lost approximately $3,000 in product. But probably the most telling for me, and the point that I wanted to make in this whole thing, is that the $20,000 or $35,000 in sales tax loss is something to the city, and it's something we should be concerned with. But of more concern to me is if you calculate that $20,000 in Bradley Burns sales tax, that calculates to over $2 million in sales to our local businesses that they were out during that time. And I think that's the more important story for us to tell, is that that was a loss to those businesses. We can recover from $20,000 lost in sales tax. Some of those businesses losing major revenues in 2 days has a significant impact on them. And some of those that I've talked to have confirmed that with me, that, you know, that's significant to them to not have that revenue coming in and to lose that product at the same time. So I just wanted to do that, and then maybe talk, maybe you'd like me to do that now, talk about the upcoming event just briefly, or do you want me to wait on that?
Thank you very much, Cleve. At this point, let's see if the council members have any questions on what you've presented to this point. Any questions for Cleve?
I honestly am surprised at the figures that you,
Yep.
yes, I really didn't. But you can also add me to that list that didn't get
Yeah.
reported in what I've lost. And it was a cause of some of my machinery to break down. And so far, I'm over $10,000 trying to get it all taken care of. So there's a lot of circumstances and things that happen to people that you probably haven't heard anything about.
Yeah, and I've tried to talk to people as I can, but I
Sure.
haven't gotten
No,
all
no,
of them.
no.
Sure. Yeah, no, I
I'm
understand.
just
Yeah.
saying, that's just one example, so.
Right.
There's also lost wages.
Wages.
That's not taken into account
Yeah.
there, about
Exactly.
people that weren't able to make it to work.
Right.
Okay, Cleve, now, and let's do and now, appearing this week,
Yeah, what
power
are we gonna
safety,
lose
power
now?
shutoff number
So,
3.
just briefly, I think everybody has most of the information that is out there. The projection is still that City of Placerville would be shut off sometime between 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock Wednesday afternoon, so tomorrow afternoon. The mayor and I have been working closely with PG and pushing them to find a way to keep at least a portion of Placerville energized. And we're particularly looking at the hospital as one, but it would be nice for our business districts to be afforded that also. They have said they're trying, and they've specifically named Placerville in a couple of the reports that I received back from them. I just want to report the most recent update that I received from County OES. Unfortunately, does still have Placerville on the list to be de-energized. I mentioned that because they do not mention North Shingle Springs, Rescue, and Pilot Hill, and Lotus have been removed from the list to be de-energized through switching, that they'll be able to keep them energized. So how they chose those areas, I don't know, but they said those areas are now saying that they won't be part of the power
Well, the weather
shut-off.
forecast, the last I saw on the news was that a lot of it now, the wind is targeted here. I mean, in the foothills, in this area, so maybe that's the reason, I don't know.
Well, but some of those, Rescue and Shingle Springs are kind of foothills too, aren't they?
Yeah, I guess,
I wouldn't
So,
believe any
anyway.
of that, Patty.
I know.
If I were you, I wouldn't
But
pay much attention.
and it depends on who you talk to. Most of my weather forecasts say, we're gonna have a light breeze,
Right.
so.
Maybe
So-
we'll see some leaves flutter this time.
I would just say, we'll try to update our website tomorrow if we get any further information, and push the information also out through our social media, especially public safety has good social media contacts. But as for now, I would tell people, please prepare that, at least at this point, it looks like we would get shut off tomorrow between 2 and 5 o'clock until we hear further, so.
Okay. Now I'd like to just if there's no questions at this point, I'll add a little bit of additional information. And just to confirm, Cleve, and at any point during this meeting, if you get a text from PG&E, because we were sitting here exactly 2 weeks ago with almost that same information, with a 2 to 4 p.m. shutdown the next day, and it was actually 3:30 a.m. when they shut the power off. And those text messages arrived here about 8 o'clock 2 weeks ago on a Tuesday night. I think 2 or 3 staffers' phones went off, and it says, "My power is imminently going off," and it did. So hopefully they won't lie to us tonight, because those are very valuable hours to everybody that's out there trying to use them. 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon is way different than 3 o'clock in the morning. Conditioning, as far as I'm concerned, is continues to totally be unacceptable. And I have been pushing very hard. Cleve and I both have been pushing very hard with Brandon Sanders, PG&E's government relations, community relations spokesperson. And I specifically invited the CEO of PG&E to come up after his comments last week at the Public Utilities Commission. Apparently, we did get the attention of a senior vice president in electric operations. Cleve, has there been anything from Brandon regarding the generator station that they're currently setting up on Broadway?
There is nothing I've heard from him on that.
Okay, last night or this morning at midnight, PG&E started to mobilize via a contractor a large mobile generating system. Consists of a number of very large semi-trailer loads. It's all been staged and is in the process of being connected inside the Placerville substation. There is also a tremendous small army of support personnel that go along with that. I can't imagine the hourly rate that particular operation is causing us, the ratepayers. I will say that the contractors were all working with great smiles this morning when I drove by. And they'd been up all night, apparently. But literally they have, and again, this is another example of their failure to communicate. They have got a plan, and all I've heard is rumors, is that they have a plan to keep part of Placerville energized this time. While I appreciate that effort, as a ratepayer, they are again spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to do something that all they have to do is maintain the lines. Cleve and I are working very hard with PG&E executives. We've asked the question why the Missouri Flat Corridor was energized on October the 9th, and down Placerville was deemed meteorologically unsafe to be restored. Did you just get a text message from him? The situation.
Probably got a nasty letter, huh?
So let me focus back here a little bit more. Marshall Hospital, I was thank them for some information that they were able to share. They were out 38 and a half hours during the last outage. There was no damage found on any distribution facility in this community. So we had a perfectly functioning electrical system de-energized for over 38 hours, including the only trauma center on the western slope. Had to operate on generator power. As you can imagine, when they are in generator mode, that restricts their abilities to function and take on other emergency cases because they now don't have a backup because they are on backup. Little statistic that because of the miscommunication during the last event, they were forced to cancel a whole number of surgical procedures. And I think it was interesting that this impacted also their Cameron Park Surgery Center as well as the Marshall Complex here in Placerville. And for those of us over 50, we can appreciate this little statistic. They had to cancel and reschedule 20 colonoscopies.
Oh, my gosh. I bet those were 20 happy people.
And I thought that it was interesting that they gave me that statistic. So I think we all can appreciate the impact, and I would have been very angry with somebody. Not acceptable. Again, no damage was ever found. So Cleve and I are working on addressing that. It'd be interesting to see what they're up to this evening. The latest information that I got was the hospital was told that they are located in a dangerous, hazardous location, and PG&E's lines will not be safe during a wind event to be energized to serve the hospital. Now, what was really, to me, socially unacceptable is I could go to Starbucks during the last event and get coffee. I could go and get a quarter pounder, and I could shop at Walmart. Those lines were deemed safe from fire hazard, but yet my only hospital in the community was in the dark for almost 2 days. I will continue to address this issue with PG&E. Got some really great feedback. This will be my last set of comments. From Lloyd Ogan, Interim Fire Chief, El Dorado County Fire District. He has been on top of this. His organization has been out during the last event, and I'll assume he'll do it again this event, collecting real-time weather observations. He has shared with me that the observations that he collected starting from the Diamond Springs area going north through Cool during the last PG&E outage, there was no critical fire weather noted. and they were using the same instruments that they use on a wildland fire incident to take fire weather. So we will be passing that information on to PG&E, and this goes in line with what Cleve has requested. The actual documentation that created this, what we were told on, gosh, Cleve, what was it, 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning, that the weather in Placerville was unsafe for PG&E to operate their equipment. And that until Central Meteorological Department released it, nothing was going to change. So there's a lot of folks that are working on this to address this. And hopefully they will learn through each one of these and we won't be affected, but I would not count on it tomorrow afternoon. Patty?
I just want to give one credit to PG&E, since we're bad-mouthing. I had occasion to talk to a friend today, and she has some medical problems, and she did say that a representative from PG&E came and knocked on her door and wanted her to know that this was going to happen and that she be prepared. So I was surprised that they were doing that for folks that have called in and told them. So.
And I would note that before I close my comments, I would like to also thank all of the department heads and all of our employees for their willingness to be flexible, and the department heads to let folks deal with issues like having no water at home and no childcare and no businesses and what have you. That is greatly appreciated. I was extremely proud in all the phone calls that Cleve and I were on with the various folks at PG&E that this city and its employees performed admirably, far above anything, ready to be prepared. We were prepared. We took care of business. There were no issues, and I know that we'll do it again because there's more events coming. Also, it wouldn't be fair if we didn't thank Caltrans District 3, and I call it the Signal Shop up in Marysville, because and it goes back to Cleve and working with Caltrans. Big thanks goes to Cleve because he spent months making sure that it was clearly understood that the signals had to function, and they did. It worked flawlessly, and it allowed this town to continue to function. It allowed our emergency responders to be able to get through town and be able to count on being able to get through town. And hopefully we won't find out, but that first event we had when Pierre was acting city manager last October, there was an hour travel time through Placerville. And how do you get a fire engine through that? So big kudos goes out to Caltrans District 3 and Cleve for their help on that. And the local PG&E guys. Kathy's right. The local PG&E crews, I understand there's been some cases in other communities where there's actually been an assault on the PG&E employees out in the field, and that is totally inappropriate. Those folks are not the problem. It's the leadership in this organization, the organizational plan that they've come up with. So thank you to our local PG&E crews for remembering that they are part of the community, and we appreciate that. So with that, if there's no questions, let's hope the wind doesn't blow. That doesn't seem to matter. All right, brief comments from the council. Yes, sir.
Could I?
Yes, sir.
Would you like me, the latest update, I know we've been
Yes,
talking about this a little
please,
bit, regarding potential, the next PSPS?
Yes.
Would you like me to talk
Yes,
about
let us
that?
have it.
So I'll just read this. The second possible wind event is still looming out there for the weekend. Another possibly PSPS back-to-back. PG&E will continue to monitor the event. Currently looking at Saturday, 10/26, 5 o'clock, through Sunday, 5 o'clock p.m., through Sunday, through Tuesday, 10/29, 8 o'clock in the morning. Should be a similar footprint, is what they're saying.
Wow.
I apologize for the bad news, but they're saying another potential over the weekend. So I just want to begin
What was
to
its
get
starting time again, Cleve?
Saturday at 5 p.m.
Saturday at 5 p.m., running through Tuesday.
through Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. So we'll continue to monitor and continue to put information out regarding that. So sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
And that came from
I think
PG&E?
This came from Cal OES, or from County OES, who
OES.
got it from PG&E. So yes, yeah.
All right, that's potentially a big one. Well, that quieted the room down.
Sorry.
Brief comments from the city council. Kara? Good evening. That just kind of put a bummer on the weekend.
Oh, yeah, I had plans.
She's just really excited about
Getting your head wrapped
going through
around
this
that one.
again.
No comments other than, like probably everybody around here, I'm incredibly frustrated by these PSPSs, and I feel like the last one I spent about a week preparing for, dealing with, and recovering from the last PSPS at the Main Street business where I work. So, and with 2 back-to-back ones, it's incredibly frustrating, and I know that the inconveniences I experience, I'm just one person, and this is magnified by the entire community. And people are dealing with much more serious issues when it comes to medical equipment, and so it's, just very frustrated by the situation, like I'm sure everybody is.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Saragosa, council member comments?
No, right? Not on this.
Yeah, we moved on to 3
Yeah, all right.
Cleve just kind of knocked the wind out of it.
Yeah.
No, Cleve didn't. It wasn't his fault.
Indeed.
Just the messenger.
So just wanted to report, I did attend the California League of Cities convention on behalf of the city of Placerville. And it was a great experience, a chance to interact with a lot of different council members and mayors, city staff from across the state. And, I've been to these before, but as a consultant, so it was a little different to be there as a city official as opposed to a consultant. I thought, I went to a lot of the workshops, homelessness, cannabis, transportation. I thought the cannabis and transportation ones, there were some really good thoughts, and so I'll be following up with staff on some of those points afterwards. On the homelessness, I was really anticipating, and I was happy to go to that one. I was a little disappointed because they used Santa Ana as the example. And, a city that large is really, I think 95% of the people sitting in the audience could not relate to what they did. Even if you combine county efforts with individual cities, it just wasn't going to be able to happen in that manner. So it wasn't the greatest of examples, although the attorney at the end did have some good advice just in terms of when you're setting up ordinances, doing different things. So I thought that was really good. And so we voted as I was recommended to do, and so no update there. It was
How'd that work out?
it was essentially like a consent item, so it moved along. It was a very abrupt ending to the convention at that point. Everyone was sort of like, well, that was strange. Yes, exactly. And then just wanted to make one more comment. So as some folks may know, the city has had 2 FPPC complaints filed against it, and this had to do in relation to the Immigrant Jane and Confidence Building and the RFP for that, for us to enter into negotiations on a long-term lease. And I just want to comment that the first complaint was rejected, and then there was a subsequent FPPC complaint also filed. And that was also rejected by the FPPC. They did state, at this time, we found insufficient evidence to establish a public official had a personal financial interest subject to the provisions of Government Code Section 1090 to pursue this matter further. They also said, based on a review of the complaint and documentation provided, the Enforcement Division found insufficient evidence of a violation, again, of Political Reform Act and Government Code Section 1090, will not pursue an enforcement action in this matter. It's just unfortunate that we have to deal with these complaints. The Government Code Section 1090 is exactly what it is. It's as if somebody either on this dais or a city official would have a personal investment or personal interest, making some sort of personal gain, or a friend making a personal gain in this. And that simply was not untrue. Unfortunately, we do have to defend ourselves in those situations, so we also have to hire outside counsel to do that. And so there's a cost to it as well. And so I know we've brought this up in the past, but certainly I like to be able to, in some fashion, be able to sunshine the costs that go with these. Even if it's just a line item, we don't have to go into any specificity on it, but I would like the public to know that there is a real cost to these when these allegations are asserted. And again, this was twice in a matter of a month that both of these allegations were deemed inefficient, no evidence, and were rejected by the FPPC. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Dennis, did you have any comments for us this evening?
I do. I've had several people contact me recently in the last few days, actually, regarding the PDA and some of the changes that they have been making. Currently, PDA has 24 members. And Tim Taylor has also called, he's the president, he's also called a meeting to discuss fundamentally changing the bylaws and the intention of PDA moving into the role of political advocacy and more of a lobbying as opposed to marketing for PDA, solely marketing for PDA and supporting the downtown merchants. They are also possibly considering dissolving the organization altogether. Now, these are all proposed and not acted on yet. However, they have a meeting November 22nd on this matter. Now, it was just a few months ago that most every merchant on Main Street that was in the parking district was a
You don't
member.
mean November 22nd?
Did I say something different?
They just had, you
No,
said.
no, no, November 22nd.
Oh, they're going to have a
Right.
meeting. I'm sorry, I thought you said they had a meeting on.
They're
Okay.
going to have a meeting on
Okay,
November 22nd.
gotcha.
Yeah. It was just a few months ago that all the merchants downtown were members by right, according to their bylaws. And PDA under Tim Taylor's leadership has summarily canceled everybody's membership and required all to reapply in order to gain access and membership as a PDA member. That's how we've gotten from close to 200 members to 24 members with the Downtown Merchants Association. It's very interesting. Now, on November 22nd, they will be holding a meeting to either change the bylaws or possibly dissolve the corporation of PDA. If they dissolve, they stand to distribute approximately $80,000 of funds inside of PDA, monies between the current 24 members. Some of that money is money collected from the business licensing fees. This is a bank account that all merchants have worked very hard to build, collect, and control in order to support and enhance the downtown. My point in sharing this is that the city distributes approximately $11,000 to PDA every year, and for marketing purposes through the collection of business license fees, and they collect $80 from every merchant within the business district. Considering they only have 24 members currently and don't truly represent most of the merchants downtown, we should have a discussion regarding the fiduciary responsibility this council has. And considering this money is collected from all of those merchants and now may be given to just 24 merchants and potentially changing their bylaws, I don't think we should just do it. So I will be bringing this forward under future agenda items to discuss as to how future agenda items as how the city wants. I would like to have a discussion. So we'll save that for later on, but that's all my public comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Patty, did you have any comments to public council
I'll
comments?
just tell you what I
Okay.
attended. I did attend the forum that was hosted by the Democratic Party and El Dorado Progressives here last Sunday, and it was they had many representative speakers. The main one, and I can't remember his name, from the sheriff's office, who pretty much, he's a member of the HOT team, and explained it and told about our participation and how, and I tell you, that HOT team has had nothing but praise. You guys are doing a wonderful job, as far as I could understand, also from the speakers that they provided. They told about all the issues, and one of the big ones that I was truly surprised, and I've already talked to Cleve and Pierre about this, are the what's happening with our trailer parks. And we have a lot of older folks that have their own, that's their home. That's their whole belongings. And apparently a lot of the owners of these trailer parks they were local. They're choosing to sell for one reason or another. big conglomerates are coming in and buying these parks, and they are raising these. I think there was a letter actually in the Democrat recently told an example, and it's forcing a lot of these older folks into homelessness. And so it's adding to our rolls. And the only sympathy and what they're told when they talk to these folks are, find a relative to go move in with. And it's just sad to hear these stories. And so I talked to Cleve and Pierre to see if there was something. We only have 2 parks, I understand, that would qualify. But to see, they're asking for some sort of a mandate there, something that we could have that would disallow this to happen. So anyway, it was a great meeting. I will tell that part of this, the HOT team and what they have established are trailer days. And they set up trailers for various reasons, and I went to the one, and Kara and I went at Walmart. And they have trailers now, the lighted candle, where they have washing machines and dryers, and then there's a team that represents any kind of medical care that anyway, the next one is going to be November, I wrote it down. Oh, God, that was good. It's at the theater lot. Do you guys have a date?
I was trying to remember what it was too, Patty.
And for anyone who,
First week of November.
yeah, it's in, anyway, it's worth visiting. I think Carol will agree with me. We were both impressed with seeing what these folks are providing. So anyway, and then I went to the El Dorado Elections Department, had open house to show their new voting machines and stuff, and I went and voted and went through the whole process, and
November 8th.
November 8th, okay. And that's in the theater parking lot from 8 to 12. So, like I say, I visited with the El Dorado, the voting process, and it's really neat. It's kind of like if you've experienced going to get your driver's license and the new touch machines that you use there. So they're making it real easy, and as our speaker indicated when he came. I also went to the latest Placerville Fire Safe Council, and they are just going gung-ho in trying to obtain grants and help keep our city safe and do all the things that we're, the next meeting will be November 21st, and we'd like more people to show up. It's at the Veterans Hall, 5:30. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you, Patty. I just have a couple of quick comments to thank staff for the Ray Lawyer Drive paving work.
Oh, isn't that beautiful?
Got her all the way down to where the taxpayers love it. So thank you very much. It looks good. And Fairlane up there by the library and the county offices, what an embarrassment that was. And how lovely it looks now. So great job. Also, I know staff has been working very hard with Western Placerville. I understand we actually had a few people try to use the ramp during Apple Hill last weekend. And it's like, okay, no, not quite yet. Rebecca, did you have an anticipated ribbon cutting moment picked out?
Yeah, we're all very excited for the project to open, some more than others.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, we had a few folks I think it was probably just a combination of Main Street being closed for Oktoberfest and then just some impatience with Apple Hill traffic. We had a few folks take it upon themselves to slide over the barrels, but we do have a planned ribbon cutting for a week from today at 2 p.m. And we hope to see everybody there. There'll be a flyer sent out probably tomorrow with location and time and everything else, and we'll work with council on the fine details.
all right. So we can keep it barricaded off for a few more days. We'll do it, and you've done it in the middle of the day, so we don't need electricity. So that's good.
I was going to say that.
Correct.
Thank you very much. All right, but seriously, great job. Beautiful project. And the little acceleration lane, Veer Camp Engineering was nice enough to kind of When you get on there now, the old existing curl ramp there that used to be kind of a crapshoot to get out, you can actually breathe a little bit. And once it's fully open, you'll be able to take a whole breath as you get up to speed and come out. So good job. So thank you very much. All right. After all of this, we move on to closed session report. Mr. Driscoll, do you have anything to report this evening? I'm trying to wrap this meeting up.
The council did not take reportable action tonight in closed session, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir, but we did enjoy having our closed session with our legal counsel present. Adoption of the agenda, is there somebody make a motion?
Move.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Agenda is adopted. Ceremonial matters, we have two ceremonial proclamations this evening. I'll just ask our city clerk, is there anyone here this evening for Extra Mile?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, ma'am. So what I think I'll do is I will let you know that we, meaning our city clerk, helped me nominate a couple of different organizations. One was Goldbug Park, and the other one, which is new this year, very new, is the Placerville Fire Safe Council. And the Extra Mile is those organizations that do go beyond, the above and beyond in their contributions to their community and volunteerism, service, et cetera. So I thought, given a total home run that the Fire Safe Council started out with in January with Mr. Zelinski and all these folks, that it certainly warranted their recognition. So we'll make sure that they're aware that they were, all their efforts have been recognized this year. That brings us also to 6.1, the Veterans Day Proclamation, which I'm proud to say that I have been invited back, and I will be reading this proclamation on Veterans Day. And I think it's very important, and I'll go ahead and spend a minute and I'll read it this evening. Proclamation of the City Council of the City of Placerville commemorating Veterans Day 2019. Whereas November 11th is the anniversary date of the end of World War I and the time to pay tribute and to remember those men and women who fought to preserve the liberties we hold so dear. And whereas Veterans Day serves as an observance that commemorates our nation's thanks to all branches of the armed forces who have served at home and around the world. And whereas to protect the nation they love, our veterans step forward whenever called on, answering the nation's call with honor, decency, and resolve. Our veterans and their families have shown the power of liberty and earned the respect and admiration of this nation. And whereas we owe a great debt to those who have served in defense of our nation, their sacrifices have preserved our unique form of government dedicated to human rights and respect for the individual. And whereas in honor of these dedicated men and women, we pledge continued defense of our nation so that their sacrifice will stand before the world as a tribute to the spirit and determination of people dedicated to freedom and democracy. I, therefore, Mayor Mark Acuna, City of Placerville, proclaim November 11th, 2019 as Veterans Day. I call upon the citizens of Placerville to express their thanks and gratitude to all the veterans and their families. And I call upon this community to begin with new resolve the task of building peace and freedom that will endure and honor the sacrifice of all our veterans. And as I said, it will be my honor to read this to the assembled group on November 11th. So that brings us on to public comment, and I will ask Mr. Morris if there are any written communications this evening.
Mayor, you have one item that was listed in your agenda, a letter from Mr. Slurry, or the law firm of Slurry Meserve, I guess you say that, regarding the recent CUP that was approved for Sourdough and Company on Main Street, their intent to file a lawsuit on behalf of Friends of Historic Hangtown. So that will be referred to our city attorney for handling.
All right. Mr. Driscoll, could you provide us any more information on what and where this is at?
We have not been served with anything yet. We've just been served with a letter indicating the intention to file suit. I don't know whether the suit's been filed and not served or whether it hasn't been filed yet. But it's typically a precursor to filing a suit for a writ of mandamus under Civil Code of Procedure 1094.5, I believe it is. It will be something that will be pretty much based on the record at the time of the hearing, when the record that was created at the hearing on the conditional use permit. And since it was de novo, it will be the city council hearing, which will be the primary record that the court would be looking at. At this point, there's really not a whole lot more that we can say other than this is apparently going to happen.
And just to restate again, it's a suit that's coming forward from the Friends of Historic Hangtown, questioning the decision that was made at
At the city council meeting on the appeal.
regarding the sourdough.
Correct, and it alleges in the letter that there was a violation of the city's general plan and a violation of city zoning laws.
Thank you, I appreciate that last little comment. And so, all right, now you and city staff are tasked with preparing for this?
This will probably go to outside counsel. There is a provision in the application that requires the applicant to defend the city if the city is sued over the project. So we'll be talking with the applicant about that.
All right, very good. Is there any questions on this?
One quick question.
Yeah, Mr. Dennis, go ahead.
Who is Friends of Historic Hangtown?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
Now, is that a group of people that,
It could be an unincorporated association, it could be a nonprofit of some type. At this point, we don't know.
Will that become clear as the proceedings go on?
It
Yeah?
probably will, yes.
That's a good question. Michael, did you have a question? No. Kara? No. Patty? All right, so I think it was just, this has happened in the past, and there's been question whether or not we should always share this information, and I think it's important that citizens understand that the city is being sued for an action that it did take and at a previous meeting, and that these Friends of Historic Hangtown have seen or seem fit to file a suit. All right. Thank you very much. No other written communications, Glaive? All right. Item 7.2, oral comment. This is a portion of the meeting where any member of the public can approach the city council and discuss an item that is not on this evening's agenda. We do ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and your subject matter to the items that are pertinent to the city council's purview. So, any member of the public wishing to address the council, if you would, please introduce yourself and welcome.
Good evening. I'm Theodore Juba. I live here in Placerville. Once upon a time, planning commissioner for the city. The Pacific Gas and Electric Company is the great king vulture of the American West, picking through the rubble of its own disasters. A company in San Francisco, accountable only to its shareholders, decides to black out El Dorado County. They don't say exactly when or for how long, and don't provide a rationale that's even loosely based in reality. Last time, it threatened our lives and our livelihoods, and it's going to happen again tomorrow. The last time was not the last time, and this is our new normal. We have enough uncertainty in our lives. We shouldn't be wondering if the lights are going to work. We need a solution, and the state government isn't looking for one. This is not a low-rent sermon about corporate greed or political power, although it's worth noting that our elected officials in Sacramento did exactly zero to help. This is a question of basic professional competence, and we reserve the right to fire anyone who isn't getting the job done. The electric company is no exception. That's why I'm asking the council to consider using the power of eminent domain to acquire PG&E's assets within city limits and use those assets to form a municipal power company. This proposal is simple but not easy. We need to find the money for it. We need to figure out how to buy the power without exposure to PG&E. We'll need to fix up the lines after decades of neglect. There's so many challenges along the way, but when it comes to keeping the lights on, and when it comes to preventing wildfires, and when it comes to even getting the job done, I trust the people in this room more than I trust anyone in Sacramento or San Francisco. And I'm not just here to ask you to do something. I'm here to raise my hand and to volunteer in any capacity to make sure that the lights stay on in Placerville. Thank you.
Thank you, Theodore. Appreciate it. Appreciate your comments. Is any another member of the public wish to address the council on a non-agendized item?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I have a little different take on PG&E. I think that it wouldn't hurt a bit if we were to follow Yolo County's example and ask for SMUD to take over our system. SMUD's lines run right through the El Dorado National Forest. As we heard from our forest supervisor, they've been a very good partner with the Forest Service over several years. A lot of their hydroelectric power comes off of the forest, just uphill from us. They maintain their lines, they do their clearing, they haven't shut down the power. They have Ice House Reservoir, they have all the way up to Lake Aloha. The power that comes for SMUD off this forest goes through, in a lot of cases, there are 7 different places where that water generates power in our county. It seems to me like we have a very logical connection, especially since SMUD's lines are already here. And in many cases, I think could connect up and take over PG&E's dilapidated mess and do a much better job. And Yolo County is already proposing and petitioning SMUD to take over their power. I think it would be smart for us to do the same. And I would urge the city council to put this on the agenda to put forth a proposal to ask SMUD to take over the power lines at least in Placerville, and to maybe work with our Board of Supervisors to take over all of El Dorado County, as Yolo County is doing for their ratepayers, because they said, we're tired of what PG&E is doing too. So Yolo County is already petitioning SMUD to go ahead and take over Yolo County's power lines. Now, there will be a cost. There is a cost to buy the power lines, of course, and to buy the rights of ways. But a lot of this could be done. And Western Sacramento County has already gone, a lot of theirs has gone to SMUD. And I think that would be, they are a power generator. It isn't like we are trying to build a whole new infrastructure or a whole new public utility to take over, when SMUD already runs their lines right through our county and gets a lot of their hydroelectric from the forest just up the hill from us in our very own county. So that would be my proposal, is for the city council to put forth a petition to the Board of Supervisors and to SMUD to take over our power generation.
Thank you, Sue. Appreciate your comments.
I'm all through, huh?
Thank you.
I had one more thing, but
All right.
save it.
Thank you. Another member of the public wishing to address the council this evening on a non-agendized item.
Good evening, Kirk Smith of
Good
Placerville.
evening, sir.
I wanted to add to your comments and those of the city manager. You're both correct. The city and the staff need to be commended because they did an exceptional job in making this recovery through this period go very smoothly. And ever since October of last year, you've all done a great job in raking the executives over the coals and letting them know that you're outraged, as are the people of this community. But I think it needs to come to a point where we look for solutions, and doesn't necessarily mean pointing fingers at everybody. Yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, they had an article about how San Jose is trying to buy out PG&E, because right now their rates are the highest in the state. They charge far more than SMUD and any other municipally owned utility. And the rate of screw-ups of having major disasters like fires just is way out of proportion to anybody else. Sue pointed that out last year about how SMUD has lines going through the same area, and they don't shut them off. So it has to do with incompetence. So number one, please stop using the phrase public safety power shortage or whatever it is. You know, these phrases, you know, put up by public relations people after a while have a life of their own, like saying weapons of mass destruction or something. This has to do with their screw-ups. That's why they're doing it. It's not for safety. It's to cover their rears because they're in bankruptcy now. So the suggestion about declaring, taking the property by eminent domain, the Constitution requires that it's with just compensation. You don't have the money to buy out their motor vehicles. But collectively, maybe you could join with San Jose and urge other communities to do the same thing they want to do, because that's what they're seeking. Whatever it is, I'm asking you to soon come up with recommendations of what you want done. And I wouldn't write off people outside the city like the governor and the state legislature, because those are people that should be solicited for things they can do. Because right now, they're in bankruptcy. There's all kinds of things that can be done, and those need to be explored. Because you are absolutely right, it's not acceptable. But a lot of the discussion starts to sound like it is, because we talk about how we're going to handle it the next time, and the next time, and the next time. The CEO is saying that it's going to go on for 10 years. And all those costs that Cleve pointed out, the millions of dollars that you're getting shortchanged, that goes up with inflation. So you're just talking about the start of it. And all these generators that go in, they're extraordinarily expensive because they're made to be used for short term, not for several days at a stretch. Thank you very much. I'm just going
Thank
to
you,
ask
sir.
you to, whatever it is, cook up something. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments this evening for the council? Good evening. I recognize our friends from Clay Street.
Clay Street, yes.
Could you we need you to pull, there you go. Thank
Good
you.
evening, everyone. How are you doing? Just an update for the Clay Street traffic impact. The police department crews that have been placed out, it's had a pretty good significant impact on the speeding of the traffic on the weekends, out-of-towners. Recently, they got the radar unit put up this last weekend. That's having a good effect in place of the stationary cruiser. We're still hoping to get some signage going or a committee. I probably missed that on the last time I was here talking. A lot of residents in the area have a lot of input, would like to see some things going on, you know, some hard signage, stop signs at Mosquito and Clay, pedestrian flashing lights like you got downtown for more safety issues. Some one-way strips on Coleman, changing the streeting from a two-way to a one-way portion of that, and maybe another one too to help reduce these out-of-town traffic from getting completely through those areas. My wife's sold 32 different signs, them little yellow ones you probably see going all the way up the street. She's got a bunch of people who bought those and put them out. They might be helping, who knows? They're getting the point across to somebody, I don't know who it is. And she goes, you must have a power outage on your front porch because the lights are out here. It's hard to see.
We'll check into that.
Yeah.
Well, thank
But,
you for
I
your,
think if you got a committee or somebody that wants to get this thing going for this Clay Street and see what can be done, residents would like to have some impact or a spokesperson from that area to work with that committee to help get things going if we could.
well, let's continue on the good work.
Thank you.
It's a living experiment. Thank you for your continued efforts out there. Any other member of the public wishing to address the council? All right, I will close public comment this evening. And I will just say, regarding the outages, the state, I have heard from Senator Dolly's office. His staff has reached out to me and continues to communicate. So I do appreciate that. But that would be it. That's the only person I've heard from. Cleve, anybody in Sacramento?
I was just going to mention Vice Mayor Sargos and I have talked about the SMUD issue, and we have actually, I have made contact with a board member of SMUD to set up a meeting with them to talk about that issue. So that is in progress. So.
It seems that in our spare time, maybe in between conference calls when you get back, we can see what that actually entails. It used to be a blood fight with PG&E. I was working for them when Folsom voted to go to SMUD. And it was a 10-year legal battle. There was fights over condemnations and value of equipment. They actually looked for volunteer employees to walk door to door and hand out brochures telling folks why they should stay with PG&E. They did a full court press. Of course, the utility industry was completely different. That was about 1980. Now I'm not so sure that they would feel the same way.
They probably couldn't get any
Well, Patty, please. Well, no, there's no employees left, for one thing. But solar has had a huge impact in California on the utility industry, massive. And PG&E has not stayed ahead of it. And so that combined with some other things. And just to reinforce the point, one of the things that I was able to verify from the last outage, and this is part of the collective information we're gathering, is PG&E chose to de-energize their transmission lines in portions of El Dorado County from Diamond Springs eastward. They shut their ultra-high voltage lines down. We've got it confirmed that SMUD did not have any problems. And those lines are literally within feet of each other in the American River corridor. I mean, you can throw a rock from one tower to the next. PG&E, SMUD, PG&E. What's the difference between the two companies? That's a huge question that I still have not gotten an answer to. So let's play a utility game next time. Seriously, well, I'll get some answers on. We'll dig into it. All right, consent calendar. All matters will be considered under one motion as a routine unless one member of the council wishes to have an item pulled for further discussion. Is there any items to be pulled this evening from consent? All right, is there any member of the public that would like to comment on one of the consent items? Pretty simple for this evening. Mr. Warren's not here. Is there a motion to approve consent?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Taylor, seconded by Councilmember Borelli. I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Motion carries. Consent calendar is approved. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 10, ordinances. Waive the first reading and introduce an ordinance adopting changes to Title IX of Placerville's municipal code related to parking. Cleve, good evening. And we have a new copy of that. Cleve provided for us this evening.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. In February of 2018, we attempted to do what we're proposing to do tonight. I know it's been a long time. Council had taken action in September of 2017, actually, to adopt some changes by resolution in order to make them take effect immediately while we cleaned up the ordinance. We brought the ordinance back. There were additional changes. We reviewed it, I think, several times and could not come to an agreement on getting everything the way we wanted it. So the purpose of this item tonight is to simply bring that back. It does not reflect a whole lot of new information. It's primarily just cleanup information from that time back in 2018 that would permanently put this in our code. Some of the things that were done back then, as you recall, initially we had changed the dates, full enforcement from 7 days a week. This changed it back to 6 days a week. That was done by resolution, so that's what we've been enforcing is 6 days a week. There were a few areas where parking was changed, and that on various streets. One of the items I want to note was the number 6 on your staff report, which is the 525 Main Street, which is the old DA building that had a 15 or 20-minute parking space in front of it. Generally would conflict with the traffic that was turning right onto Bedford, and so it was requested that we eliminate that parking space. So there's a lot of other cleanup work that has been done. A lot of it has been done to try and clarify and make the ordinance clearer and easier to read. I'm not sure we accomplished all of that because it is a little bit complicated. There's a lot of information in here. But I think we've cleaned it up and removed some things where it was no longer applicable and tried to make it appropriate for what we have today. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have, explain any of this that you would like in the ordinance. But with that, I'll turn it back to you for questions.
Thank you, Cleve. Appreciate the long-standing effort on this one. It is the most exciting of reading. Are there any questions as what's been presented so far this evening from the council?
I don't have any questions.
All right, Patty, any questions? All right. Nicole, all right. Seeing no questions, I'll go ahead and open public comment on this item and invite any member of the public that wishes to comment on item 10.1, updating and beginning the approval process for a new parking ordinance. Good evening, Sue. And I should recognize that Sue did help diligently as a proofreader on this last year.
Yes.
Well, thank you for your
I was
effort.
drafted as a member of the parking committee before that.
Oh, that's right.
So Sue Rodman, former member of the parking committee when we had a parking committee, I think it looks pretty good. There is one thing that I would really like to see us change, and that is on Clay Street for the overpass for Highway 50, we have eliminated parking on the west side of it, but we're still allowing people to park on the east side of it. When we allow people to park on that east side of that overpass, it turns it into a one-lane road and completely ruins any chance to have a safety line of sight for anybody who's walking on the El Dorado Trail, on a bicycle, or even cars, because you're dodging around all those people that are parking on the east side. And I think we need to have no parking on either side, east or west, of that overpass. And that's the only other change I would make to this ordinance.
So could I ask you were talking about the underpass?
The
on Clay
underpass
Street.
that goes under Highway 50,
just-
just up from the bridge. And
So just underneath the bridge, eliminate those like three
underneath the
stalls.
underneath the overpass, underneath the Highway 50 overpass.
Okay.
It's only about 3 places, but what it does is then you don't have, if you are walking to go to the El Dorado Trail, or you are walking across Clay Street on the El Dorado Trail, coming from the east to west, or coming up the east side of the street, you cannot see cars coming. And the cars can't see cars coming. So there's no safety, it's a public safety issue, there's not an adequate line of sight.
All right. Thank you, Sue. We appreciate that. And again, thank you for your hard work in reviewing this over the year that it's been out there circulating. Another member of the public wishing to address 10.1.
Yes, Kirk Smith. The last time this came up, a couple of years ago, it was a public relations disaster. Merchants felt they'd been sandbagged, and they filled up this room to express their concerns. And I see no change between that experience and this one. I don't see what you've done to solicit the opinions of people on Main Street that are merchants. And I think that's something that's appropriate, especially if you want the Placerville Downtown Association to consider matters that affect their businesses. So that's one thing. I think that since Councilmember Thomas was on the parking committee, and his business, just, I'm sure by coincidence, but it has more special parking spots associated with it than any other business in town. Behind the store, there's special 15-minute parking spots, and there's also a long place for loading zone, and the same, there's more spaces on the other side. So a recusal is appropriate. It's like as John Driscoll said one evening, citing a rule that you all have in your ethics book, which is to avoid the appearance of impropriety. And that's all we're talking about, is avoid the appearance. But I just would ask you, why wasn't there a concerted effort to solicit the opinions of merchants on Main Street, people who own property and are affected by it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any other member of the public wishing to address item 10.1? Seeing no one else approaching the podium, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the council. Mr. Driscoll, could you address the concern that a member of the council could be granted or should be recusing themselves from discussion on this item?
Let me ask the city manager one question about the ordinance. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. I was checking with the city manager to make sure that my recollection and that there were no changes to the parking along Stagecoach Alley. Number one, if in fact there were an issue there isn't one because those weren't changed, and that parking has been in effect for years, I think long before Councilmember Thomas even owned the pharmacy. But more importantly, I don't think there's an issue there, quite frankly, because that parking is not designated for the pharmacy. Pharmacy happens to be there, and that 15-minute parking you could use to go to the pharmacy, you could use to go to the cleaners, you could use to go to the newsstand, you used to be able to use it to go to Central and grab a cup of coffee, cross the street to the bank. I mean, it's a myriad of businesses that can use that. It's not labeled parking for Robinson's Pharmacy. So I don't really think there's an issue there.
If I may, those parking spaces were put there based on the recommendation of a consultant and based on the use of parking spaces that are needed, well, the need of parking spaces downtown for all the reasons that you talked about back in the 90s, which I think is way back before I even, a long time ago. So those were put in place because it's the need of our community, not the need of one individual business. And there's a lot of people that use those spaces commercially and private citizens as well. And it's a real asset to downtown to have those for a variety of reasons. So.
Thank you, Mr. Driscoll. And Mr. Morris, I have a question for you based on public questions this evening. There was concern about the impact that this would have to the downtown merchants. And what changes does this, other than the one spot up next to the old district attorney complex?
Yeah, the point I want to make is that Mr. Smith is right. There were a lot of people that came out
Yeah,
to
there
the
were.
downtown and talked to us, but that was prior to the September of 2017 changes that we did, which eliminated Sunday as an enforcement, changed the hours from 7 o'clock p.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. We did listen to them at that time, and we made those changes at that time by resolution. This is just codifying that in ordinance, the changes we made, with the exception of a couple of things we mentioned, such as the one parking space in front of the DA office. And there's a few minor things, but they don't really affect the downtown. There's some other parking places that we eliminated. We said no parking in those areas due to the narrowness of the road and things like that. So they're kind of givens that they needed to be there, and we tried to put cleanup language in there to affect those. So.
All right, thank you, Cleve. Are there any questions for staff or comments on?
I have a question. How does it, making any additional changes to parking other than just cleanup, how does that affect this ordinance? Do we have to do something different than?
If you are to make changes, for example, the one that Ms. Rodman has suggested, we would need to go back and reintroduce this. We couldn't introduce tonight. Is that correct, John?
We can only make changes like for typographical mistakes or sentences that are incomplete or where a reference to somebody or something is inaccurate. We can't add new parking restrictions. That would be a substantial change.
All right. And can we move this forward and then look at I mentioned do some more, what would be the most prudent and best use of our staff time in order to
Well, I have a couple of streets
I do too.
that are not on this list.
all right.
And one of them is Green Street off Highway 49, which is scary. It's scary narrow, right, Nick? And there's no parking restriction whatsoever on that street. And I believe Manor Drive was gone back and forth, and through the expert work of Mr. Pierre Relos, we've determined that that actually is a city street, and there may be a need to put some parking restrictions on
And
Manor.
the portion that we did know belonged to the city is the portion that I question, from the plant up to the stop sign.
Okay.
I also agree with Sue Rodman on Clay Street. I think that parking should be eliminated totally on both sides.
She's going rah, rah, rah. The issue with Cleve's help, I was looking, since the Paradise disaster, I've looked at several of our streets, and because of the Paradise disaster, I know there's been some pushback with what we'll call the Rodman parking spaces on Clay. We need to have that cleaned out. That needs to be clear for fire escape, for an emergency evacuation. There's 3 or 4 folks who are going to have to walk further, but that whole community couldn't get out of there right now. I've looked at Washington Street the same way, and I believe I failed to get the exact area, but Nick could probably get it for me. There's a street up there by where Marshall Hospital has their foundation, for between Turner and Washington. There's a little that's not Sheridan.
Yeah, I
A little
think
slip
it
of a
is.
street.
Where the,
Cork, it's something like, it comes up from Corker. We've got apartment buildings on one side, and now we have a house that's being used for commercial use on the other side. Frequently, you'll find 3 cars parked on both sides of that street. One side to the other, that needs to become no parking. The chief is responding code 3 to South County towards my house. I want him to be able to get out there. But seriously, because of the congestion with the hospital, there is a couple of signs on Washington that are currently missing. And there's about 6 people that are going to be really unhappy when they're put back. But that's going to be really unfortunate because right now you could not use Washington Street as an evacuation route or an emergency equipment access point because of the parking that goes on up there. Hospital use, I get it, but, so I would like to add, I guess we'll call it Corker Street for right now.
I think it's Sherman.
Sherman. Who said Corker?
I did.
Pierre said Corker.
Okay, Sherman, thank you. And from my old planning commission days, it would seem like the apartment building side, so I'll call the north side of Sherman. Because they
Can
don't
I-
have driveways or anything there.
Can I bring out one more point that I think I've talked to you about, and I just want to make this, we're not going to get every street.
Oh, no, but these are-
Likely could have it, but I understand, these are ones that
They're
are
ongoing
heavily used.
concerns.
I just want to point out the one paragraph, it's paragraph 12 under, what would it be, 931B12 on page 3, that says there shall be no parking allowed on any street where the area for parking causes the vehicle to cross the fog line, or on those streets where no fog line exists, encroaches into the lane of travel in such a manner as to create an unsafe condition. So just because it does not have a sign or a red curb or whatever, if it's creating an unsafe condition by parking on a street that is not marked, we can still enforce that if it creates that.
But
say,
wouldn't we
unsafe
have to put paint the curbs red or?
That's
or
what
put
I'm
some-
saying. We are not going to sign and paint if we do that, you're talking huge amounts of work and cost
Well,
to
how are
sign.
people gonna know that they're, like, if we?
When they
the
give them a
Clay-
ticket.
Again, if
Chief
you,
says
if you
wrong.
are, if you are encroaching into the lane of travel, you should know that you're creating an unsafe
Like on
Unsafe
Clay Street,
condition.
if we changed it?
Well, I'm saying Clay Street we will do. I'm talking about other streets that we're not actually gonna codify in here.
So any
So we're
street.
not specifically listing them.
Right.
It may be a small street somewhere that,
Like
that's,
Manor Drive.
you know, that has less traffic. And I'm saying we can look at Manor Drive too, but if you want us to go back and look at every street in the city, all I'm saying is it's gonna take a lot more work than the last 2 years that we've spent on this. So I'm just saying we do have a provision in there to still allow us to enforce. If somebody is parking unsafe on a street, we can enforce that, so.
Well, I'm going to offer my apologies because I did not realize this was coming, or I would have voiced my earlier. I have talked about Manor Drive.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway.
And I'm fine with Manor Drive. We can push this to the next meeting. We can make these suggestions that you brought up. If there are any others, I would suggest you get them to me in the next.
This will be the last call, so by the end of this week, Patty, by the end of this week?
Yes.
Okay.
It's fine.
And I
Yeah,
think,
there's a tiny street behind Placerville Glass Company that's it's this odd little
Oh, my
street.
God.
that-
Chapel?
Yeah, that also has some major issue. I don't know if that's on there or not, but I remember residents talking to me about doing something there as well. So I'll look into that one more too before
I went up
our
there
deadline.
the other day and it's horrendous.
Yeah.
and I know the Clay Street issue has come up before, but since what happened in Paradise, no, we're gonna look at these choke points. They have to be addressed, so.
Chapel Street is on here. I'm not sure for what
Is
it
that the
says
one,
for
Michael?
certain areas, but it is in the list, so. But you may want to check and make sure it includes where you're,
Yeah, I'll go look. Thank
Dennis
you.
he's doing the Google survey now. He'll make up a work map for Nick to go out. All right, so then would it be the wish of the council to direct staff to include the changes as suggested by council and public comment and bring this back at our probably our only meeting in November for introduction, first reading?
That would be my wish.
Do you need a motion, Mr. Driscoll? Oh, we probably do, because I'll make that motion.
Second.
Oh,
Seconded by Councilmember Taylor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll bring this back one last time, and we'll get it done this year, though. All right, thank you very much for everybody's time and input on this one. 12.1, adopt a resolution authorizing application for and receipt of SB2 planning grants. Mr. Rivas, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Staff is basically requesting that the council adopt the attached resolution, which would authorize staff to submit an application for and receive monies from the Senate Bill 2 Planning Grants Program funds through the State Department of Housing and Community Development. The purpose of the grant money is to receive technical assistance, planning grant funds under this program to facilitate and accelerate housing production, which can include updates to our zoning ordinances, general plan amendments, and environmental analysis in compliance with CEQA to eliminate the need for project-specific review. Staff is proposing to do two things with the funding, that multifamily residential objective design standards consistent with the ministerial approval requirements under Senate Bill 35, streamlining provisions. That has been in the past, if the council recalls, an issue with both council and the public, in that if we are to allow for the construction of by right apartment buildings to provide for affordable housing, the concern was how these apartments would look. And so we are proposing to do objective design standards so that everybody is aware, developers would be aware of what the city would expect those developments to look like. And then two, conduct the environmental analysis necessary to amend our land use maps and the zoning within the city that would accommodate additional vacant land inventory at the minimum of 20 dwelling units per acre density that would be adequate for anticipated lower income housing needs during our 2021-2029 housing element cycle 6 update. So these program funds are allocated based on population. The city of Placerville is eligible for an award of up to $160,000. There is no match requirement. That money is essentially guaranteed to the city, so it's money that's given to every jurisdiction within the state, as long as the programs that we provide meet the minimum standards within HCD's requirements. With that, staff is recommending, unless there's any questions, that the council would approve the resolution authorizing staff to submit the SB2 Planning Grants Program. Staff would request that the council make one additional change to the attached resolution, and that is section number 4 on the last page, where it says city manager or designee is authorized and directed to execute the City of Placerville Planning Grants Program application, the PGP grant documentation, and any amendments thereto on behalf of the City of Ceres. I would request that that be amended to read on behalf of the City of Placerville as required by HCD for receipt of the PGP grant. Staff apologizes for that. We use the state's standard form. This is a standard form resolution, and that identification of another competitor city was unnoticed by us. So we request you make that additional change of the resolution. With that, that concludes staff's report. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you very much, Pierre, and we certainly appreciate your honesty. Nothing wrong with plagiarizing to save time. Is there any questions for what staff is presenting this evening for 12.1?
I'd just like to know how promising it looks.
Well,
How do you think?
let me just do this.
How do we qualify?
Let me.
How do we qualify
Oh.
for that?
How do we qualify?
Does it look, does it look promising that we
Well,
would?
certainly it looks promising.
Oh, everything does, but I'm just.
You mean to get the funding?
Yeah.
It's automatic.
It's automatic?
Yep,
Yeah.
we
Okay.
will get the funding.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yep.
But since you
this
brought this up, one of the reasons we are eligible is because our staff has made sure that
Okay.
we are eligible. Correct, Pierre? We have.
Yes, that is correct. Staff did provide an additional attachment, and that's all the various programs that would meet the minimum thresholds for obtaining the funds. It's in your packet. There's a whole number of different things.
Right.
The reason why staff chose the two that we listed in the staff report is because primarily, the city neither has the staffing nor the funding to actually prepare objective design standards and also conduct a CEQA review, which more than likely will be an environmental impact report that will address the potential impacts from these sites that we will identify as being suitable for higher density residential to meet our affordable housing RENA numbers.
Okay, I understand now.
Yeah.
I misread it.
Oh, that's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
That just highlights the hard work that Pierre and his staff have been doing, and other members of staff. All right, I'm going to open public comment on 12.1. Is there any member of the public, or excuse me, 12.1, adopting the SB2 planning grant program? Being no one approach your podium, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the council for discussion and action. I would just like to again commend Pierre for having us eligible to apply for this and
Absolutely.
using consultants, putting consultants to good use so that we can continue to be in compliance with the state's mandates and especially the current governor's mandates for affordable housing. Would someone like to make a motion if there's no questions?
I'll move.
Second.
Been moved by Councilmember Borelli, seconded by Vice Mayor Zaragoza. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Motion is adopted. Thank you very much. Item 12.2, adopt a resolution approving construction services with Wilson Asphalt for parking structure restriping. Get to hear from our city engineer, Mrs. Neves. Good evening. How are you this evening?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Hope you're all well. Good evening, Mayor Cunha, Vice Mayor Zaragoza, and council members. The item before you this evening is for approval of a striping contract with Wilson's Asphalt in the amount not to exceed $8,950 for our parking structure restriping project. The patrons of the parking structure have long vocalized their frustrations with the current compact stall width of 7 feet. These stalls are often left vacant even during peak hours within the Main Street District due to inadequate space for mid-size and sometimes even compact vehicles. Staff assessed the existing parking layout for all floors of the garage and found that increasing the width of the stalls to a more standard compact width of 8 feet while reducing the total amount of compact stalls by only 2 for the first floor and second floors for a total loss of 4 stalls would not only still increase the use of the compact stalls by accommodating more vehicles through regular use, it actually just improves the overall experience for patrons of Main Street. It's a subtle change, but we feel it would be a better experience for users of those spaces. Staff solicited bids and received 1 bid from a local contractor, Wilson's Asphalt, in the amount of $8,950. City has had experience with this contractor as a subcontractor to a prime on several other successful city projects and thus recommends award of this contract. If the contract is awarded this evening, work is scheduled to begin in November. I believe the dates that they provided were November 4th through the 7th. And so the work would be done in advance of the Thanksgiving holiday. Staff's recommendations are summarized in the report, and that's all I have. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much for that concise staff report. Are there any questions for staff? We have a comment. from
Mayor,
Mr.
before
Moore.
we go on, could I add something?
Yes.
Rebecca and I had some discussion about this, and I sent an information to you in a weekly update that I did to you concerning whether or not we should, originally the report that was written proposed to eliminate the compact stalls and go to all 9-foot stalls on both floors. I asked Rebecca to change that, so you can blame me for that, but
Okay, I'm gonna blame you.
and go to the 8-foot compact, which an 8-foot compact stall is standard and is very usable for compact stalls. However, we are open to, if you would like to change that and go to 9-foot stalls, we're fine with either way. Just noting that this eliminates 4 stalls. If you go to 9-foot stalls, it eliminates 8 stalls in the garage. So I would appreciate that discussion. And again, I want to emphasize that was Rebecca's initial recommendation. I changed that. But if you want to go to the 9-foot, I'm fine either way, whatever you think is most appropriate for us moving forward.
So I'd make a suggestion that we do 9 foot on the first floor. I think anyone that's in a big truck realizes the it's difficult to go up to the second floor.
It's challenging.
Challenging, and so go to the 8 foot on the second floor, but to go to the 9 foot stalls, it would be, was that 6? I guess that we would 6 altogether. But I think that's a good compromise, so that we lose 2 less, but at the same time, we recognize that where we live, we have big trucks, we have SUVs, and it's just going to be easier, I think, to have those larger parking spaces on the first floor.
I'd like to hear why Rebecca disagrees with Cleve. No, just
Never
kidding.
really a disagreement, there's always a compromise.
Maybe she drives a big truck.
Just kidding. No, I like his idea. I do think that you get more large vehicles on the bottom floor.
That's
and
where they are,
and it would
definitely.
be a great, I guess, compromise between Cleve and Rebecca. And it would
Yes.
create harmony back at the farm there.
Little did we
But
know.
in all seriousness, I think only small cars get upstairs. Well, some big cars get upstairs too, but
Chief can go upstairs.
I've seen some stuck up there, so
That's
yeah.
the scratches you see on the side of it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or on the ceiling where they
Exactly.
didn't quite make it, but,
Oops.
but I like your idea. I think it's worthy of consideration.
All right. If there's any other questions right now, let me open public
I
comment.
would like to agree with Mr. Saragosa. He
I'm
has
going to open public comment on item 12.2. Is there any member of the public wishing to address the council on the revision of the compact stalls in the parking structure? Good evening, Sue.
Good evening. Sue Rodman, Parking Committee. This is one that we brought forward way back when. I am really happy to see this come, and I like Councilman Saragosa's idea of 9 foot on the bottom floor and 8 foot on the second floor. I think that's a great compromise.
That's another yay for Rebecca.
Yes, yay for Rebecca.
We got to get her,
Rebecca keeps
we got to get
just
Sue some
thinking
red paint. She can go around to take care of some of this stuff for us. Is there any other member of the public wishing to address the council on this one? Seeing no one else approaching the podium, I'll close it, bring it back, close the public comment, bring it back to the council.
One more comment?
Sure.
Sure, thank
Oh,
you.
absolutely.
And I'm really surprised Sue missed this one. This was this is part of the monies that has been set aside by not PDA, but by the parking district downtown that the PDA as well as the city worked very hard collectively to create so that we have funds to do this as well as the parking lots that are getting repaved, and all this is part of that, and it's being paid by parking fees
The
and
actual
such.
fees, yeah. And Dave Warren had a big hand in that. But you're right, that was a collective, positive solution, and it's actually paying off consistently. So, any other comments? I would just thank staff for finally being able to get to this one. Those little compact stalls, I'm sure there's just a lot of folks that think we have them there just to catch tickets, because it's just almost impossible in a 7-foot stall to park even a compact car that in today's America's definition of compact. So thank you, Vice Mayor, for the suggestion. I agree too, that the reality is there's big trucks and SUVs downstairs. So, all right, if someone would like to make a motion, we'll move on.
I'll move for the,
You will.
yes.
And they give us the correct
And
combination
with
so
the-
that Cleve
with-
doesn't get in
with the-
trouble.
Yes,
So that would be full-size
with the
stalls.
recommendations that Mr. Saragosa
We'll call it the
suggested.
Saragosa compromise.
Compromise, right.
It's the Neves-Morris compromise.
Oh, there you go. And would you like to second that?
I will second that.
All right. Did the clerk get that? Very good. There's money involved, so we'll do roll call.
Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Saragosa?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Motion passes. Call a contractor. We'll call them now. They're probably up. That would be great. Before Thanksgiving would be wonderful. And I got to think, I saw the parking attendant walking towards those this morning. I have to think, that's got to be a nightmare to be writing. It's like almost a guaranteed something is going to be citation at that location. All right. Council member reports. El Dorado Transit Authority, we met earlier this month. Transportation Commission, Patty, nothing?
No.
All right. LAFCO, we're meeting tomorrow night if the power's on. Well, actually, they moved the location of the meeting to Building C?
Are they going to have power there?
Apparently so. I mean,
The,
the supervisor's chambers is above where the county OES is operating downstairs, right?
And I'm wondering if that's might be why they moved it, because of the activity might be going on below
Okay.
you. That could be that they want to avoid conflicts or noise or whatever, so.
Okay. Well, I'll go down and see Todd, make sure he goes home once in a while. I understand that there's a lot of donuts and coffee down in that OES room. No comments. All right. Placerville Fire Safe Council, Patty, you already had announced
already,
that
yeah.
you guys are, and thank you for continuing to attend those. SACOG, I think you kind of already did your thing, and we did not have a 2x2, do we? Are we planning a 2x2 in the near future? We're running out of year.
Did we set it?
We didn't leave it, we left it with no date set.
Okay, so no dates
I
out.
believe we did say that, I think Don said he was going to look at dates and get with us to set a new date. So,
All right, thank you, guys. And so that takes us to requests for future agenda items, and I believe we heard from Councilmember Thomas's request to review the PDA.
The parking.
How would you like to?
The business district collection of the $80 and the disposition of that, of those funds and how we would like to move forward with that. It has been done in the past, just almost by, I wouldn't say by right, but by, it just.
Kind of by right.
It has just happened, and I think that we need to take a look at that and determine whether it's, do we want to continue on that same path or change it, so.
Is there concurrence for that agenda item?
I'd agree.
And over here, thank you very much. So, Cleve, I think we have an idea what we need to do. And then, of course, we'll be watching the outcome of that meeting, Dennis, which is November 22nd.
Yes.
Patty?
I'd like to, the trailer park situation, is it asking too soon for you to
well, we can.
at least start to look
We can
into
look
it?
at it. Yeah, I don't know if we'll get it back on the next.
That's
meeting.
okay, but just, I want to get it started.
And let's
Please.
see.
And can I request an item? too?
You certainly can.
I would like to
I would welcome it.
explore what our options would be for leaving PG&E, maybe after your meeting.
No, we actually, Pierre will talk, 'cause acting city manager.
Maybe after your meeting with SMUD, just to find out what our
You
options
know,
would be.
you're absolutely right, Karen, because this is not a question that's going to go away. We really, especially after Cleve announced this, and there's a little bit more background with this thing coming at the weekend. Yeah, it absolutely isn't just kind of let's just go see what that'll entail. I think we owe it to the constituents to find out, so we can say with some confidence that it's an X number of year process, it's X millions of dollars, it's LAFCO, it's SMUD's willingness to adopt, to even open the conversation, what that looks like.
Yeah, it's probably a 2x2 conversation as well.
Yeah.
See if they want to
And
join.
a lot of cities are having this exact same conversation, so.
Suddenly, they're very, very popular, but yeah, so, thank you, that's an excellent idea. All right, any other items for future agenda? All right, moving on to city manager and staff reports. Cleve, do you have anything additional?
Just-
Hopefully, they haven't texted you anything.
No, nothing there, but
right.
I did ask Mr. Zeller to report on our most recent cleanup day, if he could, the results of that,
Mr.
if that's
is
all
he
right,
over
Ms.
there?
Verbley?
Is Terry?
He's so quiet.
I'm still here.
Good evening, Mr. Zeller.
And he
Hi,
didn't bring
good
us any
evening.
cookies.
No cookies.
Yeah,
It's
we're
just
almost
saying.
out of cookies, so maybe next time.
it's a power outage.
So I would like to report on the tonnage totals for this latest community cleanup, which was October 12th. It was the weekend before last, and the numbers from El Dorado Disposal were a total of 28 tons of general waste, over 6 tons of metal, and over 5 tons of green waste. That one 4.5 hour to 5 hour period. It's worth noting that was still not as much as our June collection, and I think that might have been because of the overwinter character of that. And in that June cleanup date, we actually took in 43 tons of general waste, 12 tons of metal, and 7 tons of green waste. So nevertheless, this past weekend before last, it did constitute over 40 tons of material that was cluttering up our community's houses and properties, and it's a testament to how successful this twice-a-year service is to the community. So I thank those that helped with that and volunteered their time, and of course, great help of El Dorado Disposal, and we also had Snowline Hospice came out with their e-waste collection also. So it was a great event again. And also, to keep the good times rolling, for the third year in a row, Style Magazine's October issue listed Gold Bug Museum as, quote-unquote, the best museum in El Dorado County. And this goes nicely with Gold Bug as the 2019 Reader's Choice Award for Best Local Attraction in the Mountain Democrat. So I just wanted to say that publicly.
Thank you, Terry. We really appreciate all your hard work on the cleanup day. That's amazing, 40 tons in 4 hours. That's massive. And thank you for recognizing Gold Bug and all the hard work, and also the hard work that our park staff that supports all that out there. It isn't all just the volunteers. Patty?
I just remembered another event that we have coming up. It's Save the Graves at the cemetery, at the Union Cemetery,
It's this weekend.
Saturday.
or Saturday.
And they, well, Friday's a VIP, but Saturday is open to the public. And it just sounds like a really, they're going to, the Arts Council is doing this, and they're going to have folks dressed as, in period costume that addresses certain graves around the cemetery.
They're going to do actual
And
first-person
First-person from
stories.
maybe, yeah.
And Frank Fossil is one of them.
Yeah. And I can't remember.
I worked at that graveyard for
I know
a
you
while.
did.
Yeah,
Yes,
that
you
was,
did.
I did.
I've got a key to the gate.
Yeah. I got a
Thank
lot
you
of-
for reminding us.
But they're trying to raise money and that cemetery really needs some tender loving care, and it would be just a shame. We almost lost it once, and I don't want to see it happen again. And so we really need the public to come out and support this effort.
An opportunity to save history, and not just social media. You can actually get out and pull weeds, trim trees, buy a ticket. All right, I won't go through, I will go through one of the upcoming items, and that is the Measure H&L Mosquito Road, Spring Street updates. And I believe we're going to have staff provide us kind of a status of where Measure H&L is this year, and as well as those two specific projects at our next meeting, Cliff?
Yeah, that's correct. That's the plan. The plan is to do more of like an open house, like 30 minutes or an hour prior to the meeting. So we'll try and get that information out.
Kind of like a little mini community chat.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, where are we? What have we got done?
So we'll have examples of all our projects up for people to look at and ask
We'll
questions.
have a picture of Nick standing in the sinkhole up on
There we
Spring
go.
Street from last
Perfect.
year going, oh. And that's why that poor thing hasn't gotten worked on, which is
Yeah.
just a little bit more tore up than we could have ever imagined. All right. Well, I'll end with this, Cleve. Thank you for the update on the bigger story. This is going to be, sadly, I see city-state history going to maybe take place here with this whole PG&E debacle. Weather information that I have says that El Dorado County won't be impacted to meet any of PG&E's criteria. I still suspect that the power will go off. The update that I received about 5 minutes before this, I left to come down here, was that there was a severe windstorm now in the forecast to begin Sunday and last through Monday. And this is, they will be crying wolf over the next couple of days, creating tremendous disruption needlessly in a lot of communities, and a real weather event is in the horizon from what I was beginning to get information on. So this is going to be very, very interesting in the next 6 or 7 days. So with that, no other business, I'll go ahead and adjourn us to our next meeting on November 12th at 5:30 closed session. Thank you and good night.
I have a question for you. After the cannabis interviews, I